We have something to offer them. Our words can help heal the hurts. Be aware of who's in your life. Be sensitive to what you're feeling down in here. Take time to let people know that you care. In my early 20s, a young man started coming up to the gym to play basketball with us. He was a loner. He was very unfriendly, very cold. He never talked. Even during the games, he wouldn't interact with us. Most of the guys just ignored him. But something down in here told me to reach out to him and make him feel welcome. I found out that his name was Bo. When he would come into the gym, I would go over and say, "Hey, Bo, it's great to see you today." He never said anything. He just hit his chest twice and walked away. I didn't know what that meant, but I hit my chest twice and walked away. This went on for several years. I saw him 4 or 5 times a week. Well, I stopped playing basketball there, and I hadn't seen Bo in over 20 years. One Sunday, he showed up at church. I saw him afterwards. I thought, where do I know this guy from? He said, "I'm Bo. We used to play basketball together." That's the most I'd ever heard him talk. He went on to tell how he grew up in the projects. At 14, he started living on his own. Nobody wanted him. He never felt loved or accepted. He said, "One of the main reasons I went up to the gym was to hear you say, 'Great to see you today,' because nobody had told me that they were glad to see me." I didn't know it at the time, but Bo was thirsty. Those simple words, letting him know that I cared, were like life-giving water. Today, Bo is married. He introduced me to his children. He's setting a new standard for his family. What am I saying? Nobody is in your life by accident. Don't ignore what you feel on the inside, that compassion to encourage them, that desire to be their friend.
I want you to hear a story. Just sit back and relax, okay? 20 years ago, I drove a cab for a living. When I arrived at 2:30 in the morning, the building was dark except for a single light in a ground floor window. Under these circumstances, many cab drivers would just honk once or twice, wait a minute, then drive away. But I had seen too many impoverished people who depended on taxis as their only means of transportation to drive away. Unless the situation smelled of danger, I always went to the door. This passenger might be someone who really needs my assistance. So I walked to the door and knocked. "Just a moment," answered a frail, elderly voice. I could hear something being dragged across the floor. After a long pause, the door opened. A small woman in her 80s stood before me, wearing a print dress and a pillbox hat with a veil pinned on it, like somebody out of the 40s movies. By her side was a small nylon suitcase. The apartment looked as if no one had lived in it for years. All the furniture was covered with white sheets. There were no clocks on the walls, no knickknacks or utensils on the counters. In the corner was a cardboard box filled with photos and glassware. "Would you carry this bag out to the car for me?" she said. I took the suitcase out and returned to assist the woman. She took my arm and walked slowly toward the curb. She kept thanking me for my kindness. "Oh, it's nothing," I told her. "I just try to treat all my passengers the way I would want my mother treated." When we got in the cab, she gave me an address. Then she said, "Oh, by the way, could you drive through downtown?" "It's not the shortest way," I answered quickly. "Oh, I don't mind. I'm in no hurry. I'm on my way to a hospice." I looked in the rearview mirror and her eyes were glistening. I don't have any family left," she said, almost to herself. "The doctor says I don't have very long." I quietly reached over, shut off the meter. What route would you like me to take? For the next 2 hours, we drove all around the city. She showed me the building where she had once worked as an elevator operator. We drove through the neighborhood where she and her husband had lived when they were newlyweds. She had me pull up in front of a furniture warehouse that had once been a ballroom where she had gone dancing as a girl. Sometimes she'd ask me to slow down in front of a particular building or corner. She would sit staring into the darkness, saying nothing. As the first hint of sun was creasing the horizon, she suddenly said, "Okay, I'm ready. Let's go now." We drove in silence to the address she had given me. It was a low building, like a small convalescent home with a driveway that passed under a portico. 2 orderlies came out to the cab. As soon as we pulled up, they were solicitous and intent, watching her every move. They were expecting her. I opened the trunk, took out the small suitcase, carried it to the door. The woman was already seated in a wheelchair. "How much do I owe you?" she asked. "No, you don't owe me anything," I said. "Oh, you have to make a living," she answered. "Oh, there are other passengers," I responded. Almost without thinking, I bent over and gave her a hug. And she held on to me tightly. "You gave an old woman a little bit of joy," she said. "Thank you." I squeezed her hand and walked into the dim morning light. Behind me, a door shut. It was the sound of the closing of a life. I didn't pick up any more passengers that shift. I drove aimlessly, lost in thought for the rest of the day. I could hardly talk. What if that woman had gotten in an angry driver earlier that morning, or one who was impatient? What if I had refused to take the run, or had honked once and driven away? On a quick review, I don't think I have done anything more important in all my life. I love that story. It sort of helps me allow life to make up its mind again. You need to remember that story. The times you will want to be anything but kind. Because it is so much easier to bear a grudge and hate in return, or get back, or get even. Hate destroys the vessel it's kept in. Revenge never healed a wound. There's one thing all of us have in common: we've been mistreated by somebody. You've already felt the sting of not being understood by those you thought would understand. It's just starting. And all of this has a way of siphoning your tank of kindness. It can make you hard. And you can get on with hard. You can get along with it. In fact, some will even respect you more because you're tough. But I urge you not to be. Be kind, tender-hearted, forgiving one another. It is required that you love kindness. It's required that you love it.